Welcome to the first in a series of podcasts on school safety and security presented by the Jeffco DeAngelis Foundation. My name is Kevin Caroll, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for the Foundation. The DeAngelis Foundation originated in Jefferson County, Colorado, with a deep passion and relentless commitment to share best practices in school safety and security with first responders as well as schools and school district personnel. We, in partnership with Jefferson County Public Schools, support a one-of-a-kind training facility, the Frank DeAngelis Center for Community Safety. This former elementary school is now a premier training facility which has supported over 6,500 first responders. Our trainings encompass everything from the practical to the tactical, focusing on proven approaches to preparedness, response, and recovery. More can be learned about the training facility, our team of nationally recognized trainers, and the foundation itself by visiting www.deangeliscenter.org. I'd like to begin with introducing one of our founders and nationally recognized school safety and security experts, Mr. John McDonald. John is the Executive Director of the Department of School Safety for Jefferson County Schools and an integral part of the Foundation's work.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. John and I are joined today by a remarkable woman and mother, Michele Gay, one of the co-founders of a nonprofit called Safe and Sound Schools. Safe and Sound Schools has become one of the premier school safety advocacy and resource centers in the country, and this doesn't happen by accident. Michele and her co-founder, Alyssa Parker, are two mothers who each lost daughters in the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy in 2012. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me.
Michele, let's start just with a little bit of background and conversation. Safe and Sound Schools was born out of tragedy, but what have you created in a center of hopefulness, resiliency, and connection? How does this happen?
You know, I like to think also, like you said, not by accident, but it's been a very organic process for us. I think Alyssa and I both looked to our daughters, Emily and Joey, for inspiration. And, you know, they were very hopeful and still are to us, very hopeful forces in the world. They were both remarkably resilient and very inspiring little young ladies. So for us, maintaining their spirit and just being true to that has, I believe, helped us connect with the right people, the people that are pushing up their sleeves on a day-to-day basis to make sure that our schools across the country are safe and sound. And from there, we just continue to grow. It's just absolutely amazing to work with people that we get to work with.
So what's been the focus of Safe and Sound from the time you started until now, and is it shifting?
I would say we've stayed pretty true to our desire to support school communities and professionals dedicated to the safety of school communities. For us, a lot of that comes down to preparation. And for us, it's preparation across the spectrum, making sure that schools are prepared for prevention, response, and recovery of any type of school-based crisis. You know, our crisis, very obviously an act of horrific mass violence. And that is a specific kind of worst-case scenario that I think a lot of schools are focused on, rightfully so. But there are so many other types of crises that our schools are facing on a day-to-day basis. The planning, the preparation, the coordination to make sure that we are preventing, better responding to, and more fully recovering our communities so that ultimately we're building resilient school communities.
Michele, would you mind talking a little bit about that moment when you shifted from dealing with this absolute tragedy as families to being compelled to do outreach and say, what can we do about this?
It very much happened in Colorado. We were just beginning to sort of get our thinking brains back online. And, you know, I remember the day of the tragedy, just sitting in the parking lot and looking at the sea of people there to help and wishing we had done a better job connecting beforehand so that perhaps we could have prevented this, perhaps we could have done a better job responding and then in the long term, you know, recovering. But at some point, we were invited by some friends, actually that moved from our community in Newtown to this area to join, a gathering here. And I stood up and spoke just a few words, really more out of, gratitude. Thank you for hosting us and helping us learn about how we can be a part of the solution. And from that point on, it's been pretty clear that this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. When I think about safe and sound and, frankly, Columbine and Sandy Hook and Parkland and Santa Fe, Texas and Virginia Tech and hundreds of other school shootings, I can't help but think that, this has become a national conversation. And in part because of that work that you've committed yourself to. Can you talk about the driving decision to make your voices heard? I mean, where did that come from?
So I think in the beginning, it felt as though it wasn't a choice. It felt like we couldn't find a quiet, private place to hide and heal. It was a real challenge. But I do remember a moment in time where, we had to face the fact that our lives were very public, that this tragedy, this loss, our grief, our journey was going to be very public. So rather than running from it for the rest of our lives, we could turn and stare it down and actually put that experience to use for others, to make sure that others had our hindsight, that could become the foresight of others, and really perhaps make a real difference in the national conversation.
Talk about maybe some surprises that you and Alyssa have had along the way. So you had this brainchild saying, we are going to do something. We are compelled to do something. We can't hide and heal. We have to heal, but we can't hide. Talk about things that have happened along the way that were absolutely unexpected.
It's been unexpected how many people are so actively engaged in keeping our kids and our teachers, our schools, our communities safe. I think that's been an important part of the healing process for us, just realizing that we really aren't in this alone, and helping communities and individuals connect with one another nationwide to share in the work, not reinvent the wheel, move forward, elevate the conversation and the level of preparedness by connecting with others. Those have been really positive discoveries and surprises for us along the way, and really a big part of our healing process, I would say.
So as you've gone around and supported so many across the country, what would you say are some of the trends and patterns that you're seeing, some things that you think are going to be really important in the next 3 to 5 years, the next steps in this work?
There are a lot. For our part, having spent a lot of time in the field and really stepping into this space, talking with people from all different parts of the country, all different stakeholder groups. For us, what's important is creating a comprehensive approach. We see lots of folks grasping at different solutions or programs or buzzwords. All of those things are actually important pieces of the larger puzzle that is school safety. So I think helping folks sometimes step back from the emotion that drives a lot of this work. It's emotional. We want to keep our kids safe. We want to keep our schools safe. But sometimes taking a couple steps back and being thoughtful, being strategic, and making sure that our approach is holistic, that it really does involve multiple disciplines and perspectives and roles from the community. I think that, at least for our part, is going to be a big push. I do see in terms of other pieces of the puzzle that are emerging as critically important. A lot of our schools are learning about and now developing threat assessment programs, threat assessment teams, more robust multidisciplinary teams that can respond to any type of crisis in the community. I would say also a lot of attention and need in the area of gender diversity and considerations. A lot of our schools are sort of caught flat-footed, I think, by some of the needs there. And at the end of the day, everybody just wants everybody to feel safe enough and comfortable enough and welcome enough to learn. So that's something that is uniquely unifying around an issue that might otherwise, outside of the school, be a little bit controversial. But I think that's going to be a critical thrust in school safety for sure. Mental health, huge. And also social emotional learning is just a very strong theme, a very positive theme that we're seeing in a lot of our school communities.
Great. John, if we could play off of that a little bit. Michele mentioned threat assessment. Talk about the importance of connecting threat assessment and threat management.
Well, assessment is certainly a good tool to help identify attack behavior, right? Whether it's proactive attack behavior, somebody preparing for you, purchasing a weapon, developing a hit list, creating plans, making a substantial effort, versus the reactive attack behavior that comes from the spur of the moment engagement or anger that's occurring. Maybe you're bullied. Maybe you just had a fight with somebody and you strike out with words. And then there's behavior that's designed to psychologically intimidate, harass, and threaten that doesn't rise to the level of a physical attack, but certainly has an emotional component. All of those are really important to identify in a threat assessment, but where we see success or failure is in threat management. What are we doing on day one? What does week one look like? What does month one look like? And then once that student is on your radar, how do they ever come off your radar? So if they've engaged in attack behavior, especially proactive attack behavior, once they're on your radar, you cannot allow them to come off. You continually have to monitor and case manage that student. And how you do that really determines long-term outcomes, not only for the students throughout the school, but also that student that engaged in the behavior, because the hope is that we can get that student back to some semblance of normalcy and back into an educational setting. However, we know sometimes that's not possible.
I think for a lot of our schools, learning about the process, hearing threat assessment's a big buzzword now, and hopefully we can get threat management to be the buzzword right behind it, but recognizing that it's not a punitive process, that it's about intervening for the safety of that individual student as well as the school community, the kids and teachers around that individual, that very often these are cries for help. And our job as the responsible caring adults in the community is to make sure that we are intervening and we are providing support through that management process.
The single biggest issue that I see around the country is that our educators, and they're wonderful people that think the best of our kids. So when a threat happens, they tend to say, oh, it's just so-and-so. And you know how he is. He doesn't really mean it. When somebody says, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to blow you up, I'm going to hurt you, we have to believe them. We've seen too many issues throughout the country where that broadcast has been made. In fact, most school shooters will broadcast in advance what they're going to do. So we have to believe the threat. And once you go into this with an understanding that you made a threat, we now believe you, we have to do that threat assessment process. We can't put our heads in the sand. We can't be that school. You can't be that district. You can't be that law enforcement agency. It's just not appropriate.
So the threat management process really is the so what after a threat assessment is done. What are we going to do to come together as a team?
See something, say something, now do something. What are we going to do about it to make sure that everybody is safe?
We're going to watch and monitor and manage and support and leverage resources to be able to support everyone who's involved.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I think has become obvious in the last few years is that the world of school safety has been politicized like nobody's business. You've stayed out of the political fight that has really dominated the school safety world. Has this been a conscious choice, or is this just who you all are?
It's who we all are first, but I think more than I think it runs deeper than that. I think we made a conscious decision, Alyssa and I, to always be guided by our daughters. Safe and Sound Schools is a legacy foundation. So in thinking about what is important to them, and school was really important to these little ladies. It was their place in the world, their teachers, their friends, their classmates. This was just heaven on earth for these kids. And that's exactly what it should be. And so for us to watch that be shattered literally in the matter of minutes in our community, and then, we're going through our own grief and loss process, but part of that loss was that community, that place, that that sense of safety, that there's this amazing place in the world where you're safe to come and grow and learn. And for me as a teacher, as well as a mom, the mother of Josephine who loves school so much, that was just a tragedy that I couldn't stand by and live with. And there's nothing political about that. When you step back and you look at what are we really trying to accomplish, there's absolutely nothing political about it. So we really started our work as a very grassroots organization. What can we do here right now with you in this moment to make this school safer, to make people feel safer, to help connect them with the resources of safety, mental health, physical safety, culture, climate, leadership, all of those things feed into it. And none of those things are political. We are asked on a regular basis to weigh in about something political, but it doesn't really, it's just not part of this work. It's not part of this journey. And in that way, it has been relatively easy to stay out of that cul-de-sac, if you will, and stay on point in the right direction.
So, John, Michele talks about the climate and culture, this wonderful place to be, right? Be part of a family and a community. Oftentimes when we talk about safety and security, we talk about target hardening. How, from your perspective, do we create that balance so that it does feel like an approachable, welcoming environment where kids truly and staff truly are safe?
Well, that's the challenge, right, is creating that safe and welcoming environment without creating a fortress mentality, allowing those kids to feel like they're in an environment that they're free to learn and grow and thrive and be happy and be kids in the school. And yet at the same time, target hardening means that we have to look at the world a little differently. We have to understand that the reason we spend so much time and energy and effort in school safety is that somebody in a community is planning right now what they want to do or what they're going to do when it comes to a school attack. So for us, what are those things that we can do to really provide opportunity and time delayed to get responders there to protect students and staff? I mean, everything starts with, I think, training. So lockdown drills are so important. But it also, we start looking at the world from curbside to classroom. What does the front of a school look like? How easy is it to get into a school? Once you're in, what are the opportunities for lockdown for kids to get safe or to self-evacuate? What's the benefit of a camera? We have to look at all this new technology, and every vendor out there has a new app that's bound and determined to save lives. I've never seen an app save a life, but I've seen training save lives, and I've seen teachers save lives. I've seen teachers and cops both do remarkable things. So I think we have to recognize that there's a lot of stuff out there in an industry that's now almost $2.5 billion a year, making a lot of money on fear and worry and concern. And we have to really look at what's relevant, what works, and what the return on investment is. The return on investment for me is pretty easy to measure. People say you can't measure prevention. I say they're wrong. I think if you want to measure prevention, ask your kids how they feel about their own safety. They will tell you. And then you build programming from there.
It's interesting, the expression of target hardening definitely makes the elementary school teacher in me bristle a bit, and I think lots of parents and educators as well. But as I learned about it, it was something that resonated for me really positively. I just don't think of it with those words. For me, it's layers of safety. So literally from the curb, physical layers of safety. What are all the different layers or buffers that we have between someone approaching the school building and making their way potentially to a classroom within the school? There are quite a lot that we can put in there. Not to mention all of the soft layers of safety, the social emotional learning programs, the education that we deliver to teachers and students. Teaching and training folks to speak up or communicate when something doesn't sound right, look right, feel right, smell right. Those are all layers, and I think for the lay person, for the community member, the parent, the elementary school teacher, looking at it that way is it really is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how you choose to communicate it and think about it.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I've long held that there's different languages between cops and educators, and
We need a translator
right?
sometime.
We need a and I feel like I speak cop really well, and over the last 13 years, I've learned to speak educator somewhat, but it's important to have those people in your environment that can speak both, that have the capacity to help message. Because when I say target hardening, in my world, that's a normal term. In your world,
It's something you want to run away from.
right.
Yes.
So I think it's important.
I don't want any targets, and I don't want
Right.
hard things. I wanted it to be very soft
Right.
and loving and warm. And
Exactly, and it's a different type of language. In law enforcement, we talk about intel dictates tactics. In the education world, we talk about information drives decisions. It's just different.
it's the same idea,
same
just
idea.
different. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Well, we're working in an environment where, as educators, this is not what we were trained for.
Nope.
As a teacher and as a principal, this is not what I thought I was getting into.
Never.
But there is absolutely nothing more important than the safety of the students who families drop off their most prized possession to us every day.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I think the partnership between educators and first responders is so significant that we are compelled to start speaking the same language.
We really are. I think that's just the most. It's the most amazing thing too when you do bring people together and they find out actually. So we didn't start off speaking the same language, but there's a ton of common ground. And you're absolutely right, Kevin. It's foundational. If we don't have kids that are physically safe, healthy, well-nourished, stress-free, or at least, stress reduced when they're coming into the building with a strong sense of safety, then we don't have them available to learn and grow as we were trained, to do. So we have to have that foundation of safety.
So it's clear to me, Michele, that you and Alyssa are fully immersed in this work. And it is emotionally and physically draining. How is it that you keep yourself balanced to be able to continue to give to this important work?
So definitely a work in progress. I think learning as I'm going to be more responsible and more mindful of my own needs, my own sort of just breaking point at times. I think I've come close a couple times and then just realized, okay, it's time to practice what I'm preaching out there in terms of self-care. But I will say what's been incredibly helpful is just taking this journey with a lot of other people around me. Being able to connect with folks here in Colorado and across the country who are all on their own journey as well, knowing that the safety of our schools does not rest on just my shoulders. It's not just on your shoulders. It's something we all really share. And I think the more we learn that, appreciate that, work together, the better job I think we can do, the more successful we can be in terms of moving the ball forward, for sure.
So I got to ask, you developed the post-crisis support network with Safe and Sound. What is that, and what's the goal?
So again, it's something that kind of just started happening over time. We at Safe and Sound Schools are delivering workshops, trainings, keynotes, presentations, summits, all different types of things, really with education as the primary thrust. But a big part of education is just taking time to talk and debrief and decompress together. And so out of a lot of those conversations, we developed relationships. And then when we would leave and go back home, a school community would reach back to us and say, okay, this is our time. We're struggling. This has just happened. We're in the middle of this crisis, or we don't know what to do here. Just help us think this through. So it's very informal in that it's just about facilitating conversations. Sometimes those take place over, like a Zoom or a Skype, and sometimes they take place over the phone. Sometimes we'll fly in with a team, generally a team of survivors, victims, as well always as some mental health professionals to support and facilitate and then connect the community with their own resources, remind them, help them locate resources so that when we leave, they have a feeling of sustainability. They have a feeling that, okay, we've got what we need. And if we need more, we can reach back to the post-crisis support network and dive a little bit deeper. But really just about getting those productive conversations going and helping folks to find their way, begin chiseling their way forward along the path.
So this past year, you broadened that conversation and held the first Safe and Sound Schools National Conference in Houston. By every indication, it was a hit and resonated industry-wide. Do you plan on doing that again? And if so, when might that be and where might that be?
We absolutely do. It was an incredible experience, I think, for all of us, those of us who put so much heart and soul and work into it, the speakers, the trainers, the experts that came from all across the country, and then all of our attendees. So really just an amazing moment for our national community to come together. So it was a packed house, and I think lots of amazing things came out of it. But for us, I think the greatest thing was just the connections, to watch firsthand the connections, the hugs, the handshakes, people that had been working together, virtually for some time and finally getting to see each other in person. Again, people I think left feeling like, okay, I'm not in this alone. I have this vast network of people that are doing this, that we're all in this together. I think that was, the most important thing. So this year it'll be in Dallas at the end of April 29th and 30th. We're lucky enough to work with a lot of the regions in Texas that have these amazing training facilities. So Region 10 in Dallas will be hosting us this year.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then, so you've created the Safe and Sound Institute. What is that, and how can organizations or schools bring the Institute to their community?
Yeah, there are a lot of different levels of that. I would say if you think of it, it can be as informal as, a keynote. There's a particular topic that your school community needs a training on, or perhaps they need one of our speakers to come out and provide some motivation and inspiration. So it can be something as simple as that, all the way up to our national summit. And then in between, some statewide summits we've done we've kind of done traveling tours across various states, depending on the size of the state. Some of these states are pretty big, so it takes a couple stops. But we've done all kinds of customized trainings, workshops, and just kind of variations on the education, training, and connections that are required to create that sustainability.
Great. So our two foundations are embarking on a new partnership where we hope to magnify the positive potential of both organizations. I encourage our listeners to continue to check back to see where we take things. Do you have anything else you'd like to share that we have not touched on?
Wow, mostly gratitude. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about this, that people are interested and engaged and want to become a part of it. Grateful for this partnership and what's going to come out of it between our two organizations. I think I think of it as you use the word magnifying, really amplifying. Really connecting our connections and making this even more broad, even deeper, and more powerful.
And finally, what do you want when you think about the legacy of Safe and Sound Schools to be?
We use a lot of different words. I think hope is the first one that comes to mind. I think sometimes people look at the state of school safety and can easily become overwhelmed and hopeless. And that's just not the case. There's so many of us out there that are willing to pitch in and work together. So I think hope's a big part of it. I think that's something that our daughters uniquely left us with. I also think empowerment. I feel that when we do come together, when we share our knowledge and our experiences, we really help lift each other up. We carry each other miles that way. So to really feel empowered that there's a tremendous amount we can do to keep every student, every child, and every school safe and sound. That's what we want.
Well, thank you, Michele, and we would ask that you pass our gratitude along to Alyssa as well. John, thank you for your time today as well, and your dedication, both of you, to improving school safety practices for the benefit of all students, family, and staff. What a gift it is to have such partners in this most important work. This conversation has been brought to you by the Jeffco DeAngelis Foundation. More information about the foundation can be found at www.deangeliscenter.org.